Dan and Brad. Hey guys.
Hey Scott, thank you for the introduction and welcome everybody to our Q&A Wednesday, every other Wednesday now webinar. Before we begin, a typical disclaimer, Trade Ideas is not a registered investment advisor, so all the information you're going to hear from myself, Brad, Scott, Barry, or any team member of Trade Ideas, whether on this Q&A or at any other time, or all the information that you see from our software should never be construed as registered or formal investment advice of any kind. It is for educational and informational purposes only. With that, let's begin.
So just to summarize, don't listen to us.
Yes. One of the things that we're very excited about is that through your subscriptions, we are a Inc. 5000 now 5 years in a row running company. Very few, this slide needs to be updated, but again, we've been on the Inc. 5000 list for the fastest growing privately held companies in the United States 5 years in a row. Maybe we'll make it 6 years. The problem is, you know, Brad, as we do better and better, it's hard to compete with ourselves.
Yeah, it really is. We keep setting the bar higher, so it is difficult.
Yeah, it's a little tricky, but one of the really cool things is our software is not outsourced to any Chinese or Russian, or not that there's anything wrong with other countries, but we make all of our software here in the USA with our US-based development team. And one of the most important things that we do to get you to really understand how the market works is we have the most advanced simulated trading environment in the software business that allows you to automate, allows you to practice lots of different things, and all in simulated mode without risking any of your own capital. Next slide. Okay, let's minimize this. And so one of the things that we do here on the Q&A, and Brad and I are usually your hosts, and we used to do this every week, but we're doing this now every other week because we wanted to kind of make it so that there's more stuff to talk about. And we have been working on something behind the scenes, okay, that's sort of like what we look at as a next generation visualization technology at Trade Ideas. And what Brad and I are going to do is we're going to demonstrate to you all, again, we're going to talk about lots of different things. Primarily, we're going to talk about this thing, some of the things that you can do with it, how it's different in terms of what you're going to do, how we might be able to bring gamification to it, lots of different stuff like that. And of course, we're going to show you some things that we've modified with the AI, and lots of, again, that'll probably be enough for the whole webinar. So Brad, let's bring in the race, and maybe you can, you know, Brad, I think I came up with the idea, but Brad's already way better at it than I am.
You want to put me on the spot. So I don't know, what do you think the best way to demonstrate this, to show a race that's already in progress, or to kind of take it from the beginning as you set it up? What do you think?
I think already in progress, because it's kind of a quickly gives the eyes what's going on, and then we'll explain it, and then we'll do a historical trace back. Or no?
Sounds good. So I've got a bunch of different races. This is called the stock race, the real-time stock race. And I did run a few races here before the webinar started here. So I've got a little bit of a head start. I'll bring this guy in right here. And essentially what this is a way of visualizing a top list, but it does it in a very, very unique way. It's taking a look at the top list at the moment you're starting to look at it right now. Like, you know, this, I could be looking at this window up here, this biggest gainers under $10, and that's looking at it for the day and all the filters that I have in there. But when I pull that window up, I want to know what's going to happen from this point forward. And that's really what one of the great advantages of this, although there are a lot of different ways to use it. But this real-time stock race allows you to visualize a top list window using a parameter that you select. In this case, let me just explain what we're looking at here. I started this race 47 minutes ago, and it's really based upon change post-market percentage. So looking at stocks that are trading in the post-market and really looking for the stocks that are moving the most in that time period. So when I started it, this is the ranked order that I get here, and I have Fossil that's leading the way. Affirm is, you know, right there on its tail. I ran a few races before that actually finished. And what happens is when it reaches the finish line based on whatever your target is, the bottom one that's still running, I've got my target being 60 minutes. So it's looking at time as the horizon. for 60 minutes. But what I'm looking here at this top race that had already finished, I'm taking the change post-market, the same as I am looking at on the bottom race. But in this case, I'm looking for a delta value of 3%. So this is basically going to be a race for whichever stocks that's leading in the post-market gainers, whoever can gain from the moment I start this race, 3%. And you can really use any of the different variables that we have in the software, any of the different filters that you can make a column can then be a data point that you use to run a race.
Brad, could you
How am I
maybe,
doing there, Dan? It's a little, I've never practiced that spiel right there, so.
well, no, I love it. I love hearing what you just said, because again, you're already better at this than I am. Could you maybe do the slider back and show people just like what happened during the race so they can see kind of like how this would have looked? And by the way, this is another one of these features where you'll be able to maybe, like, for example, Brad, imagine a layout where we have a few cached races. Do you know what I'm saying? And I'm speaking literally right off the cuff. And when somebody turns on the layout, what they do is the slider just moves from, across the race. So you can see what's been happening. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So let me show you here. This is because of the red background on this particular race window, it's been completed. You can see who won it up here. But this slider right here allows me to really historically go back and see how that race progressed. Was Fossil in the lead the whole time, or did it come from behind? And we're doing a couple of things. If you look at this bottom, it shows it up here as well, but it's giving you an indication of whether these cars or stocks are moving down or up in the list. So a red highlight here is going to indicate that that car has been moving down. A green highlight, like you see over here in SPIR Plus, is letting you know that that stock had moved up into the list. It's also giving you some indication on pullback. That's what this little red indicator is going to be over here on the right. So when a stock actually pulls back a little bit, you're going to see this animation letting you know that that has taken place.
So Brad, let me throw something out for people. Now imagine being able to do a DraftKings type of thing here, where you can place small bets that are just not specifically related to the way the stock is performing in price the way everybody else does it, but again, sort of like in this different way. And we actually think that DraftKings might want to partner with us on something like this, because again, we can just create lots of different games and gamify this in a way that very few people I think have visualized this before. Brad, I'm speaking about this freestyle. I think DraftKings would love this.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that is one of the advantages of having something like this. So it's not just betting on a stock, which of course you can do, and that's what we're in the business of doing, is creating these ideas. But you can also bet within a universe of stocks and how they're performing. So this window that I just brought in right here, let me get rid of some because it gets a little confusing as I have all of these. But I'm just going to explain some different scenarios of what you can do. I've got this top list window down here at the bottom, this recently traded. And that was really the genesis. That was the top list window that generated this particular stock race. So these are my stocks that I trade, that I've been watching. And so it's using a symbol list. It's using a couple different symbol lists that I maintain. And so this race is really based upon that. And when I was running it, it was really just looking at the change from the close percentage. So at the moment I started the race, not that Ride was up at the top at the time, but the moment I started the race, it let me know that CLF was outperforming all of the other stocks that were in my portfolio or that were in my watch list. So a lot of different ways that we can use this. So we're still, banging around some ideas and scenarios. This is by no means finished. It's still in a development build. It hasn't made its way out to the beta build for you guys, but it'll happen in the next few weeks. And it links in. So if something is moving and you want to see exactly what's going on, you can just click on the car, the symbol, and it'll update your charts like everything else in the software.
Just to, Brad, to add, because even I didn't realize this, but in order to launch, so maybe do me a favor, Brad, move the stock list and right click in your top list so people can see. You have to have the top list open. So there's got to be a top list. And then when
you have to start with it, right? And that may change where we have some pre-configured ideas and races that are already set up. But the beauty here is that you have a complete open palette from which to run. So my configuration here, I'm going to go ahead and decide or I can decide exactly what I'm looking at. I don't have any filters here, but I'm just looking at a couple different symbol lists that I put together. And then of course I'm defining the columns. This is important too, because depending upon what columns you have visible in your window are columns that you can manipulate in the stock race. So, and all you do is you right click here. Once you set up your window the way that you like it, sorted the way that you want it, you just right click and go to real-time stock race. And the setup is we're gonna simplify this a little bit because it's giving us a lot of different options, but it gives you the ability to set up your race based on time or based on a value. So for instance, if I wanted to see growing relative volume, which is a real interesting metric, I could put relative volume as my factor that this race is going to be based on. I can set it to delta. That means if it's going to grow, it's going to grow 1 point in the relative volume. So let's say, look at my list over here. Ride is going to start off at 1.25. SSRM is going to start off at 3.39 relative volume. But when I hit start, they're all equivalent. And if this moves up to 1.35, well, that's 0.10. And it'll all be, working in tandem with each other and this entire list. One of the things that we have in here is we have this option to replace cards. So you're going to start off with up to 10 different candidates in your race right here. But by having this particular option selected, candidates can drop off and new stocks can come on in and join the race based on their performance and how they're doing based on the metric that you've defined right here. And then with respect to the order of the cards up at the top, you can have it set up any way that you want. I prefer to look at delta value because that's essentially going to give me my winner up at the top and kind of give me a hierarchy where my loser, the worst one, is going to be at the bottom. But you can use a couple of different methods there. The linking, this is our new color-coded linking that we have with all the windows, but it's incorporated here. This is visible on the interface. It'll probably be a right click as we get closer to it. If I wanted to see in my list the first candidate to reach a relative volume value of something like 10, I could set an absolute value here where I'm not looking for the change, but when this value gets to a 10 in the relative volume, then it's going to win the race. So,
and it starts from the point of the race, right, Brad?
Pardon me?
It starts from the point of the race or from whatever?
Well, it depends, right? So if I use this delta option right here, that's starting from the moment I hit this start button. Calculations are starting fresh at that point. But if I use total, that's really just looking to that filter and telling me when the stock gets to that value. Could do something like change from the close percentage and you use a value of 5. So the first guy to get up 5% is going to be winning the race.
And Brad, did you have a race on something that was like on your portfolio? Because the gentleman asked about that. And really it has to do with—
I did. And that was this guy right here. Actually, I ran a bunch of them early off of my portfolio. I think, not sure how. This was a slider. But yeah, Fossil and Affirm were the two guys that were really, really winning all my races early on. And, I think when you pull those guys up and you look at the chart, I don't know what's happened recently, but when I was, oh boy, it just continued. So, it was winning the races here in the first 10 minutes after the market, continually. And boy, that sure continued to pan out right there.
And one of the things that we're really trying to showcase, and Brad, by the way, I really like the way you're explaining all of this. I really, really do, because it's even helping me, one of the guys that came up with the idea. The idea here is that we noticed that when you look at data through the top list, it's an Excel type of view. And not that there, and we have cool stuff in there like the position and range, which really, Brad, there's a lot of similarities between the concept.
Yeah, I agree.
Between the concept of the position and range and how it's updating. And like, for example, if you, Brad, sort that top list by change from the close real quick. Right, so you see like PubMed, PUBM, it pulled off. So you can see that it's not a race winner in terms of, now percentage wise, yes, it's still very strong, but that's relative to everything else. There were many like SOFIW and RIDE, they all closed relatively stronger in terms of their position in range for the day. Now, obviously, this position in range concept is really cool, but the way that the data updates itself, we just thought that it would be so much neater to be able to visualize this concept of position in range. But really, Brad, it's a position in range in almost anything, right?
Yeah. Well, it's a position in range relative to the point in time, right? I mean, these guys are on highs, but they may not have moved much.
That's right.
So there's so many different dimensions to the data that it's just providing another dimension.
And that's one of the things that we're trying to highlight, is that we noticed that so many things in terms of stock market and technical analysis kind of stays the same with the charts and, you know, and what you can do, but you're really limited. And what we thought about the racing concept is how this allows you to sort of see multiple charts in different scenarios, but at the same time in a way that everybody relates. And Brad, do me a favor, scroll that the scroll all the way to the left real quick, so like the beginning of the race.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. Well, it's still running. It'll be done here in a minute.
Oh, well, maybe do on. Okay.
I have another one. I can bring in another one.
Right. So put it all the way to the left, and let's just move it really slowly so people can kind of visualize it, but obviously a lot faster.
So I'm gonna just give you a caveat here, because we're dealing with post-market. Their data is not quite as full as it is during the regular market, so it may be a little more bouncy. But actually, you know what? Let's do this one here, because time is not going to be. This is going to be as smooth as it possibly gets.
Okay, so let's take a look. So now it's like you can see, here we go. The race is starting, and affirm, fossil, affirm, SoFi jumps up, affirm. I mean, it's almost like a horse race, really, Brad, right? You can speak to it in horse race terms.
Yeah, you don't get the pullback visualization on the history yet, but
what's coming? I like how you have SoFi and the warrants in the same race, which is fine. But as you're moving it here, again, so imagine, okay? Imagine like 4 of these windows doing this sort of a thing, like having the races have just won, giving you a perspective on what it is that you may want to, and look at KLTW kind of just starting to move forward, starting to position itself. So it gives you this perspective with your eyes that you otherwise simply would not have had if you were simply observing the top list. Well, Mike, we're going to have logos. The race cars is just a concept to make people understand, like, that there's motion, the race is on. So yes, I mean, in theory, we could do lots of stuff with it, but we're also trying to just keep it simple for now. So this is a big thing that we're working on, as Brad said. And this will probably be available to you soon. And one of the things that we're gonna be doing is creating some layouts for you, because we know that people don't really know exactly how to utilize the tech right off the get-go. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna create some pre-configured race layouts where you're gonna be able to see races, you know, and Brad, maybe again, a feature will be auto restart races, stuff like that. You know, so that the idea is that people don't have to do a lot, but they can just come in and watch. And I really like conceptually, Brad, that the idea of having races run and then replaying them so that things just start. Imagine just the concept of moving up from percentage from the close and relative volume, and you're just seeing the leaders for the first half hour, what's really going on. And hopefully, again, that can catch your attention and get you into the things that are really potent. And this one's going right now, right?
Yeah.
So did you add the feature of post-market since we got off our conference call?
No, I just told you we weren't able to do anything during the market hours with that filter, so I needed to wait until the end of the day.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, because that's a post-market filter. So notice once again, I mean, everything that Brad is showing you, this route, I mean, that's happening now. Fossil, that's happening right now. And you just restarted the race, right?
I just restarted it. You know, I've got a small value here of 2%. I mean, that's not insignificant. I don't really know what the best numbers to use post-market, but I kind of dialed it into 3 and 4% were providing me interesting moves that were happening. So.
Yeah, and by the way, we're gonna look for feedback from you guys as to how to, better improve it. Here's open, so take a look. And I love the idea of just being able to catch them. And the reason that you're catching it is because it bounced, came back, but then had that just pop right there, right? I mean, it's as simple as that. So you're able to see some things here that you just simply might not have caught if you're just looking at a spreadsheet. And you would have had to have been looking at the charts themselves. So this creates a different visualization concept. And I still say, Brad, that when I look at this, and it definitely touches upon what I think intuitively we want it to do. Obviously, still developmental, and we're gonna figure it all out, but it's doing it.
Yeah, no, I think it provides some interesting value, complementary value to that of the top list. So.
Yeah. All right. Are there any questions about? Thank you, Gilbert. About the stock racing. Anything else that we can do? Because again, this is a big R&D project behind the scenes, and we're gonna shift gears again. We've done half the Q&A, and we're gonna shift gears towards the other part now. If you guys are all good. Thank you, Mitchell. We appreciate that. Well, Naveen, it's funny that you say that. Imagine that you had a race that spanned a month, but you had the playback on and you had it just playing, and you could see a month worth of activity really quick. You can kind of get an idea of what's going on for the month in a feel concept that I think you otherwise might not have. Because one of the things that we can do here is we can record and replay races, so that where you see all those 4 windows right now, the top lists and the single stock window, what you could possibly see is 4 races that are just going, but they don't have to run in real time all the time. And this is something that Brad and I are playing with, is that we could have had races pre-run, and when you turn it on, you're just seeing kind of the fast forward play of the race. So that's another concept. Yeah, we can definitely extend the time past an hour, right, Brad?
Yeah, no, yeah. I just arbitrarily chose 60 minutes, but you could choose 6.5 hours if you wanted to start it.
Right, you could have a race the whole day, and by the way, in the middle of the day, you could, can you pull them back? Do you have to have it over, Brad, before you go back to the slider, or can you slide back during the race? So not yet. Oh, Ride was the winner. That's interesting. Wow, look at that move. Brad, is your audio on?
Oh, I'm sorry, I had it on mute. Yeah, Ride had a good pop, and it pulled back pretty significantly, but you never know.
I mean, and that's again, how would you have, can I just say right there, guys, look at what just happened. How could you have ever had caught that, right? Unless you were, there's no way to catch that in a Excel spreadsheet format.
And it's also hard to catch it on a chart when you've got a bar right here that takes out the perspective, because
That's
now,
right.
That's actually a fairly good move, but with that bar right there, it makes it so you can barely see it. So it's another interesting kind of dilemma that we're presented with when stuff like that happens, that this has a way of seeing through it.
Will you rerun that race from the start real quick? So just look at it the way it went. Open, open, open. Everything else is kind of slow. Open still. Here comes ride, just appeared, and boom. Look at that. So this is the thing. This would have caught your attention really quick. And now, by the way, you've got a heads up. You may want to be watching this thing for tomorrow. Brad, I love this.
Or just set a price alert, you know, you could.
Well, that goes back to our combination, right? Now, we've talked about the 1-2. We talked about that with the AI, but guess what? The races provide the same 1-2 combination where if you see something win a race, you don't necessarily have to trade it, but you can put in your levels. And obviously the levels can then be connected to the buy and sell buttons very soon in simulated trading, lots of different things that you can do. Really good stuff, Brad. Love it.
Yeah, so for the people that are new to our software, we're not just a race car company. We are the premier alert and scanning tool, idea generation in the stock market. And so what I'm showing here is our channel bar. It's our remote control to the market. This is what you would use when you're watching TV. When you're watching the stock market, you use this channel bar. So really, when you start off with trade ideas, you don't really have to know all the nuances that go along with the software. It's something that you accumulate over time in using it. You know, we've been doing this for just about 20 years now, so there's a lot of functionality that we built into it. But with the channel bar here, you can, you know, based on these concepts that we have, you can just get started right away.
Yeah, and the more again that I see what we're doing with the racing and how we're going to have pre-configured races in the channels, I think it's just going to make a strong value proposition for people to be able to find different ideas in a different way. You know, Brad, eventually we might make it so that there's a race per channel, you know, and
Yep.
the race is ongoing.
Yeah, it would be nice to pull up the metals channel and have a race that had been continually run throughout the day. You know, maybe it's a single race and it just keeps running. And when you pull that channel up, you might want to find out that maybe CDE had won the race more than anybody else. And little information like that could correlate. I don't know that it correlates to a profitable trade, but I think that there is some correlative effect.
Indeed. Looks very, very good.
So on the channel bar over here, we've got different themes. It could be a theme of, you know, like metals that we have here, where we're looking at miners and different metal stocks, or it could be something where we're looking for momentum, or we're looking for some type of price action, surging, momentum, pre-market. So a lot of different themes. So you should peruse these, and when you find a window that you like, feel free to incorporate it into your own custom channel or your own personal layout. You can always take any window that we've made and you can go ahead and you can duplicate it right into a free floating window, and you can save that and bring it into your layout. And once you've created your own workspace, you can create your own custom channel. Like I've got 3 different custom channels here. And those custom channels, it can be a complete workspace, it can be one window, or it can be a couple different windows that fit a theme. Like I've got this climactic one right here, which is going to load up this climactic channel, which is just a couple different windows that I put together that look for climactic moves. And then I could go back to another one of the channels that I'm looking at. So that's kind of what I do. I have my own layout that I use during the day, but I'll pop up this this dock channel bar to maybe peruse some different themes and then go back to kind of what I'm doing.
Can I ask you a question?
You sure can.
Do I see a notification in your toolbar?
You do. So I have a notification here. I was kind of tinkering with that earlier. This is our latest piece of functionality. So when you go ahead and select that, I created this message, so there's not potential server latency, but I just kind of wanted to see how it was working. So you got a notification by having that orange message there, and you can keep an archive of your messages, or you can delete it.
Very good. And again,
yeah, that's the latest. And then we also have this performance monitor right here. So when you select that, if it's yellow or red, you may want to select that because we've identified a potential problem with your workspace. Maybe you have too many windows. Maybe your top list is set up to bring in 1,000 different results, and that's just, you have 10 top lists and it's doing that. Or you have some pinned windows that are minimized and you weren't aware of that. So this little tool right here helps us do some great troubleshooting if you're finding that you're having some sluggish performance or something's not seeming right with your software. So the messaging as well as the performance monitor are two of our latest. I think these will be in the next beta version of the software.
And Brad, you're in are you in a dock just to be able to move that around to show people real quick? Because you have a lot of space on that monitor. Yeah.
Yeah, this is just a dock right here that I have, and I could, if I wanted to make it proportionally bigger, I can do that.
Can you do me a favor, possibly? Could you make it proportionally smaller and then pull up another channel next to it? So there's just to demonstrate that you can have multiple channels now kind of going at the same time.
Sure. Like for instance, for me, I would, let me do this. Let me go to my cloud and let me pull up this particular doc that I have. So this is like my main doc that I have on, hello. I'm in a super dev version, so a little bit of a problem with that load, but essentially you can have two docs set up. I don't know what happened with that.
Maybe close it, just bring up another channel bar so that the idea that I'm trying to show somebody is they can just put out, let's go to the AI channel maybe, and then we can discuss what we changed there.
Now this one really should be a little bit bigger because it's got a lot of detail in it.
Okay. So one of the things that we modified on the AI is that we put everything, the conservative profit, moderate profit, and aggressive profit in dollar terms instead of percentage terms. We had percentage a long time ago because we had thought it kind of made sense, but you really should not be totaling, adding up percentages. Although in reality, I mean, we wanted to kind of show how many percentage points the AI was catching independently. So if it caught 10 percentage points in one trade and 10 percentage points in another trade, we were adding those together. And we decided that's not a good mathematical way to represent the data. So what we have it now as is a points-based system. And Brad, put in show people where you set that dollar amount.
Yeah, so up on our toolbar up here, we go to Tools, Options, AI Trade Size. So this is where you can define what the equivalent shares of a trade are going to be. So I have it set up to $5,000 per trade, and based upon the stock price, it'll tell me how many shares that I need to. In this case here, there were 350 shares to make up that $5,000 worth. Another way you could do it is you could have, let's say you wanted to do every trade, you wanted to do 100 shares. You could do that. Another interesting way to do it is doing our risk-based setup here, and that's based upon the stop loss. Here, if I put $100 or put a value of 100, that's telling it that if a trade gets stopped out, I'm going to lose $100. So again, it'll size you appropriately because every one of these trades comes in with a suggested stop, and that suggested stop, wherever that price point is for it, it'll size you accordingly so that if it hits it, you've only lost $100.
Correct. So again, and let's talk about conservative, moderate, and aggressive profit real quick. Just what's the difference?
Yeah, so, and I have them all visible here on this particular, this view here. So we've got our conservative, moderate, and aggressive, and they all work in a little bit different ways. So every strategy in the AI is optimized with a particular hold time. That hold time could be until the end of the day, it could be an hour, it could be 2 hours, just whatever that concept is, whatever the value is used to optimize it. So the conservative mode is essentially getting you out at the end of that optimization time. So if it used 60 minutes, then it's going to be getting you out at the end of the 60 minutes. Or we have a few algorithms in place there. If there's a significant pullback after it moves up and it pulls back pretty significantly, we'll get you out on a profit save. And then there are a couple others. But then if you're talking about the moderate profit, that's essentially saying that when I get into a position, I'm going to try to hold it until the end of the day, regardless of whatever time you use to whatever time was used to optimize it. But you can get stopped out. It's still going to adhere to stops. And then the final mode is our aggressive profit, which is very much like the moderate profit mode, where it's going to hold it to the end of the day. But in this particular scenario, it's not going to adhere to any stops. So it's never going to get stopped out. You could have a tremendously big loser in the aggressive mode, whereas in the moderate mode, you'll never be losing more than what your stop was. That was a lot. I don't know if I hit it all, but those are three different ways of looking at it. And it's important to have those different reference points, because not every day is the same. Stocks have some days they have follow through, some days they don't. And it's important to recognize what kind of day it is today as early as possible.
Yeah. Brad, do me a favor. So, because this I think is a really good example of two things that we're bringing out. One we've talked about before, but maybe you could tell people, what is that E that I'm seeing at the bottom of the daily chart?
So that's a work in process, but essentially what that's doing is letting us know on a historical basis there was earnings on this particular date, and you could hover over it and it'll tell you exactly what. There's still some more things that we're going to be putting in here, refining it a bit, but yeah, it's giving you some historical knowledge of when that earnings announcement was. And when you have let me do this, let me bring in a top list real quick, and let's just put in an earnings filter. So I'm just gonna basically take any top list here, and I want to see stocks that had earnings today. All right, so if I click on one of these guys, you're going to see if the earnings are today or within the upcoming week, you're going to have a notification on the chart here letting you know that earnings are expected to be announced on a particular date. Earnings dates are a best guess scenario. They're not always adhered to, but for the most part, they're pretty accurate. So it's good to have this information right at your fingertips when you're deciding to either hold a position or to put on a trade.
Brad, will you do me a favor and click on KRP? Because I want to show people one of I think we're kind of approaching the tail end of the Q&A, and we've given you guys a lot, but I want to finish the visual part with a concept that everybody should be using, and that is, notice that here we've got the AI trigger 1426 for this. And what we're doing here is this is a mean reversion strategy. You see that it's a big gap down, and a lot of times when that happens, again, it could possibly be if there's any kind of reversal, and we're not saying that it's going to be that way, but if there is any kind of reversal, they tend to potentially be pretty big, especially when the downward move happened on 9 times relative volume. Okay, so Brad, do me a favor, right click and create a price alert, like just at 1450 or something like that, where we're above this whole area, where you know something positive is happening. Sometimes we make it right at the alert trigger, but here what you're doing is, I mean, move it, I would say above the little wick even.
Oh, okay. Come on.
Well, let me explain why. No, just lower, just at the top of the wick, right there. So what we're doing here is we're saying, hey,
the wick was up to here, but.
Okay, well that's fine. Just what we're saying is that emotionally, a lot of this has been digested, and it's now like whoever sold it, they're experiencing potential seller's remorse, and you're creating a trigger that's going to let you know when that happens, and it'll automatically alert you. And this is another way that you can utilize the AI. So typically at the end of the day, we say to people, even if you didn't take the trades, you can take a look at, like, for example, Brad, let's go to yesterday's trades real quick.
Go to what?
Yesterday's trades. I'm going to show people that you can do the history. Okay, So let's take a look at AMRS. That was a short. So it's like the opposite of the strategy that we had today. Okay, so that was a short, and it continued down. So that was actually ended up being a good trade. But let's play it the same way we did the previous one. Put a trigger above the sell signal. Like this is the sell signal, and you're playing the mean reversion.
Put it right on it.
Right. So now you're going to be averted because, again, selling something short at $7.54, it's more of a tricky move. Not that it can't be done, but the broader range play is seeing if it can turn around. And again, once you have this in there, Brad, it's there forever, really, until it gets triggered and you're averted to it. So this is the beauty of how the AI and you can work together. Let's do one more with TRHC. Okay, so TRHC, Brad kind of did today what I think about these trades when I see them, right? It's that big sell-off, then the remorse, and the big run up. But let's set another alert at like 1470, let's say, on the daily, because you can see the big price area. Okay. So do you guys see what we're doing here? We're taking AI trades that you may or may not have gotten into, and we're creating alert triggers from them. And this is one of the big things that people often get, not confused per se, but they only think that the AI is just for day trading and that's it. But in reality, it's so much more. And this is the 1-2 punch to really take advantage of all that we have to offer. And Brad's now going to a little bit more of a historical perspective.
Yeah, you know, these are, this is really underutilized, to be quite honest. All this data is available to you guys that have access to the premium service, and you can always grab these symbols right here. You can create a symbol list. You can put your price alerts in. There's so much that can be done, and a lot of these guys have continued follow through. They're not, you know, the idea is that these are longer term trades, even though we're trying to make you profitable at the end of the day so that you're in a much stronger position whether to decide whether you want to hold it or not. I mean, that's really the key. You want to be in a position of strength to make that decision, not a position of weakness. And there's a big difference when you're making that decision.
And as Brad and I keep saying, this allows you to take advantage of longer term things in the AI, and the combination of the AI and the price alerts is the 1-2 punch that we continue to reiterate all throughout the demonstrations. All right, are there any other questions? Because then we're going to finish up. All right, let's expand that. Okay, so for a promo code today, if you're not a subscriber, we have Holly Rocks, 15% off your first month for a year off of Trade Ideas. I always joke and say, if you can't afford $7.50 a day for artificial intelligence-based software, Trade Ideas is not the right thing for you. But here you can see what the standard costs a day versus the premium, and a yearly and monthly. So obviously it costs less to go for a year and a little bit more for the month, but we hope you subscribe. Most of you are already subscribers, so we appreciate that. Daily support session, our support team is always there, and we are continuing to help people all throughout the week. It's one of our best resources for you to get information of any kind, and it's very simple to sign up, trade-ideas.com/live.
Yeah, you don't even need to sign up. You just pop in right there and you can ask away, ask your questions.
Yep. our friend Barry Anderson, who's with us in the trading room, assisting in the moderation and helping, has a trading room. It's full of other investors who are longtime users of the Trade Idea, a community that supports one another, and Barry's one of the best at helping people, and he's there every single day, uses the AI and has his own stock list. Please, if you're just interested and haven't taken a look at Trade Ideas, it's a great way to get started. trade-ideas.com/trading room. And of course, very easy to get a hold of us on any type of social media, as well as calling, liking us on the various platforms. I think we're now even active on TikTok. Brad, you know what, on this channel, we should have a YouTube link on this slide. If you have any questions, go to our YouTube channel. Fantastic way to see things that we've just put out, a wide selection of videos for your perusal. And of course, if you have any questions, always shoot us an email at info@trade-ideas.com. Brad, I think we're it. Scott, that's it.
It's a wrap.
That's it. That's a wrap. The recording will be available later on tonight or tomorrow morning. So stay tuned for an update about how to find it on our YouTube channel. Thanks all. Have a good one.
Bye, everybody.